We're going to set up form tracking in Google Analytics 4, and I'm going to share 4 common mistakes you can avoid when setting up form tracking. There are different ways you can track form submissions on your website into Google Analytics. First, GA4 includes an option to automatically track forms, but this doesn't work for all forms. Another option is to track the thank you page after someone completes your form. But if your form doesn't redirect to a thank you page, this won't work either. So another option is to use Google Tag Manager. We're going to walk through all of these options, so let's get started. The easiest way to track your form submissions is using the automatic form tracking built into GA4. So let's start by seeing if this works on our website. To do this, we need to check if automatic form tracking is enabled. So let's navigate to Admin. Now let's select Data Streams in the Property column. Then we need to look for Enhanced Measurement. Enhanced Measurement lets us manage all of the actions that are automatically tracked in GA4. Let's select the configuration icon. Looking at the settings, we can see Form Interactions is enabled. This means GA4 will automatically try to track when people begin to complete a form on our website and when they submit a form. Since this is enabled, we're going to use Tag Assistant to preview our website and see if our forms are automatically tracked. Let's open a new tab. And to open Tag Assistant, you just need to enter tagassistant.google.com. Now we enter the URL of our website. And click Connect. Once your website is loaded, you'll need to navigate to the form you want to track. So let's navigate to the form. Let's complete the form. And submit the form. Now let's open Tag Assistant. And let's select our GA4 measurement ID at the top. This lets us see the events that have been sent to Google Analytics. And we can see there is a form start event that tracked when we started completing the form. And there's a form submit event for when we submitted the form. Okay, so that's good. Our form is being tracked. If you've completed these steps on your website and you're seeing the same events, you can use the automatic form tracking. However, I recommend testing all of your forms to make sure they're all tracked. I found it doesn't always work. And even if you're not using the automatic form tracking, make sure to test all of your forms. Not testing all of your forms is a common mistake people make. You might find only some of your forms are tracked. Since I have multiple forms, I'm going to test another form. Before I do this, let's clear Tag Assistant. Now let's head back to my website. And let's navigate to another form. Let's complete the form. And click Submit. Now let's open Tag Assistant. This time we can see the form start event, but there's no form submit event. This means the automatic form tracking is only tracking when we start to fill in the form. It's not tracking successful form submissions. So this means we're going to have to use another approach to track the forms on our website. Let's head back to my website. We can see that after we submitted this form, we were redirected to a thank you page. This means we can use the thank you page to track successful form submissions. To do this, let's head to Google Analytics. We're still looking at the enhanced measurement settings, so let's close this. And let's select Events in the Property column. If you have administrator or editor permission in Google Analytics, then you can create and modify events directly in the interface. We're going to use this option to trigger a new form submission event when someone views the thank you page after they've successfully completed our form. So let's click Create Event. And now let's click Create. We need to name our event. I suggest following Google's recommended naming convention, so let's enter form_submit. Now we need to enter the conditions for when we want our new event to be triggered. Let's ensure event_name is entered as the parameter. Then equals, and for the value, let's enter page_view. This will mean we'll be matching page view events. Since we only want to match the thank you page, we need to enter another condition. So let's click Add Condition. And let's enter page_location. Let's change equals to starts with. And let's enter the URL of our thank you page. This will mean that our new event will be triggered when someone views the thank you page on our website. Now let's create the event. Moving forward, you'll begin to see your form submit events in your reports. Okay, but what if your form doesn't redirect to a thank you page? In this case, the best option is to use Google Tag Manager to send events to GA4. There are a few different ways you can do this. You can use a form submit trigger, an element visibility trigger, or even push a custom event to the data layer. Let's head to GTM to take a look. I've already opened my GTM container, so let's start by selecting Variables. Variables are used to capture different pieces of information. There are a number of built-in variables that are super useful when it comes to tracking forms. So let's select Configure for the built-in variables. Scrolling down, we can see a number of variables listed under Forms. These built-in variables let us capture things like the class, ID, and other details about the forms people engage with on our website. So let's enable all of these variables. Now let's navigate to Triggers. And let's create a new trigger. Let's name the trigger Form Submit. And let's select Trigger Configuration. Under User Engagement, we can see the Form Submission trigger. Let's select this. By default, this trigger will fire our tags whenever a form is submitted on our website. Using the form submission trigger like this is a mistake. Yes, it will track every form submission, but this will include when people try to submit an incomplete form. So it's going to mean you're not collecting accurate information into Google Analytics. So to use this trigger, you will want to enable the check validation option. This means GTM will only fire our tag if the form is successfully submitted. However, like the automatic tracking we covered previously, this isn't compatible with every website. You'll need to test it with your forms first. Let's try this. Let's select Check Validation. We can see we need to set a condition to use this, so let's select Form Classes using the drop-down. Now let's head to our website. Find the form we want to track. Right-click the form and select Inspect. We can see this form has a class of React-Form-Contents, so we will use this to configure the trigger. Let's head back to GTM. Let's leave Contains. And let's enter React-Form-Contents as the value. Now let's save our trigger. We will test our trigger in a moment, but before we do, we're going to create a GA4 event tag to send data to Google Analytics. Let's navigate to Tags, and let's create a new tag. Let's name the tag Google Analytics GA4 Form Submit. Now let's select Tag Configuration. And let's choose GA4 Event as the tag type. Now we need to select our existing GA4 configuration tag using the drop-down. If you're just getting started with GTM or you don't have a GA4 configuration tag, then I recommend watching my dedicated tutorial. In the tutorial, I walk through how to add GA4 to your website using GTM, including the configuration tag. You can find a link in the description below this video. Next, we need to name our event. Let's name the event form_submit. If there is custom information you'd like to send to Google Analytics, like the ID, class, or other details about the form, then you can add a parameter to the event. For example, let's say we wanted to collect the ID of the form. To do this, we would click Add Row, name our parameter, and then select the built-in form ID variable as the value. This will automatically capture the ID of the form and send it to Google Analytics. A mistake I've seen people make is adding a custom parameter to track the URL of the form. The GA4 event tag will automatically collect a number of parameters, including page location, page title, page referrer, and more. So you don't need to configure these as custom parameters. It's already available in your reports. Next, we need to add a trigger to our tag, so let's select Triggering. And let's select the Form Submit trigger we created. Now let's save the tag. Since we've created a tag and applied our trigger, it's time to test it out. So let's click Preview. We need to enter the URL of our website. And click Connect. Our website loads. And now we need to navigate to our form. Let's complete the form. And let's click Submit. Now that we've successfully submitted our form, let's select the Tag Assistant tab. We can see our form submission tag is listed under Tags Not Fired. So our tag didn't fire. This is because we used the form submission trigger along with the check validation option. So on my site, which is a Squarespace site, I can't use the form submission trigger to fire my tag. Did the form submission trigger work for your forms? Let me know in the comments below. If it didn't, it means we need to use another type of trigger to fire our GA4 event tag. A good option that we can use is an element visibility trigger, which means we trigger our tag when a thank you message is displayed. To do this, we need to identify the element we're going to use on our website. So let's head back to my site. We can see the thank you message that is displayed after a successful form submission. Let's right-click this and select Inspect. We can see that the thank you message is contained in a div with a class of form-submission-text. So we're going to use this to configure our trigger and fire our tag. Okay, let's head back to GTM. And let's navigate to Triggers. Let's open our Form Submit trigger. Since this didn't work on my website, we're going to change it. Let's select Trigger Configuration. And now let's click Form Submission. Let's change this to Element Visibility. For the selection method, let's change ID to CSS Selector. And then for the element selector, let's enter a full stop and then the class of our thank you message. This was form-submission-text. Since the thank you message appears on the page without the URL changing and without the page refreshing, we're going to enable the Observe DOM Changes option. This will mean that when the message appears on the page, our trigger will be able to identify the element we've specified in the trigger. Okay, Now let's click Save. And let's preview our changes. Tag Assistant connects to our website. And then we can find the form on our website. Complete the form, and click Submit. Now let's open Tag Assistant. We can now see our Form Submit event has been fired. We're now able to track our form submissions into GA4 when the thank you message appears. Once you've tested your forms, you can publish the GTM container to your website. To do this, click Submit. Name your version, and click Publish. Moving forward, we'll be tracking form submissions in Google Analytics. If you've decided to use GTM to track your forms, then it's important to turn off the automatic form tracking in GA4. If you don't turn this off, then you'll probably be tracking 2 events for every form submission in your reports. So let's head back to Google Analytics to check this. We're in the admin area, so let's select Data Streams in the Property column. Let's select our data stream and select the configuration icon for enhanced measurement. We can see form interactions is on, so we need to switch this off. And click Save. Now, if you want to track your form submissions as conversions in GA4, you'll just need to enable the Form Submit event as a conversion. Let's take a look at how to do this. We need to close the data stream, then select Events, and then we just need to find our Form Submit event. And then on the right, we need to enable the event as a conversion. Now, moving forward, the event will be counted as a conversion in our reports. And here's one final mistake you can avoid. By default, GA4 will count each form submission as a conversion. However, you can change this so a form submission is only counted as a conversion once per session. To adjust this, we navigate to Conversions. Then select the 3 vertical dots on the very right of your Form Submit event. Choose Change Counting Method. Select once per session, and then click Save. We will now only count a form submission as a conversion once per session. Apart from tracking forms, there's even more you can learn about Google Analytics, so make sure you subscribe to this channel to learn everything else you can do with GTM and GA4. Understanding your audience and how they use your website will take your business to the next level. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.